Welcome into Philthy, a Philadelphia Eagles podcast. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. And Tyson, this is our Philadelphia Eagles central and centered podcast. And what a time to fire this baby up again, because it's been 3 straight losses for the Eagles. They went from looking like kings of the world, oh, wow, 10 wins, first team to get there again, to all of a sudden this team may not win a playoff game. How did we get here? We're going to talk through a bunch of different things, the coaching changes, Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, talk about the offense. But Tyson, first and foremost, I want to ask you, because it seems like they are, but are the Eagles in big trouble?
Yeah, they're in, I think, more than big trouble. I think, we've kind of remarked it a handful of times off the air, like this just is 2018 after they won the Super Bowl through 2020. It just kind of feels like all of those seasons wrapped up and accelerated within these past 3 weeks. Like, I told you, I went back and tried to like cut on some all 22 film in the last couple of weeks, and I was going through the numbers and everything. And I don't have an answer really as to what happened. It feels like it rotted from the inside in 3 weeks. Like we're in Josina Anderson territory, basically. It's like how this feels. We're hit pieces on certain players. Like I'm just waiting for all of that. But Brad, my number one thing that I think is bothering me the most is after the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2017 and Howie Roseman gave out bigger than necessary contracts to a lot of the aging veterans, that obviously went very poorly, right? And we don't need to kind of relitigate that. But then that was the messaging that we got from the front office was we're not going to do that again. We learned from our mistakes. And then they did it again, right? Like James Bradberry has been the worst corner in the NFL.
Oof.
He's just been brutally bad. Darius Slay, for as much kind of shit as he's gotten, hasn't been nearly as bad as James Bradberry. He hasn't been, prime Darius Slay, but what do you expect from a 32-year-old corner with that injury history? And then, like, the defensive line rotation, all we do is draft in the trenches. That's all the Philadelphia Eagles are built on, offensive and defensive linemen. And then you ship out Derek Barnett. And Nolan Smith doesn't look like he's ready to go at this moment. The defensive tackle rotation went from, man, there might be 7 guys on this. We don't need Contavious Street to, okay, so when Fletch and Jalen Carter are on the field, we're in really big trouble. And that's not where this team was 3 weeks ago. They're gassed, man. Like the whole team feels just tired and a little over it, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, mentally and physically, it looks like they're tired. They look exhausted. They look like just get us into the playoffs, and then maybe we can ramp it up. And I think that's the thing, right? Like these seasons are so long. Like when it first started off struggling, and we're like, "Whoa, man, it just doesn't look it doesn't look the same." But they kept winning. There was like different feelings of emotion from, "Oh man, this is concerning without Steichen." Oh man, we really like Desai on the defensive side. He's different than Gannon. Then it was, oh my God, you can't tell us anything. The Eagles are winning. We know how to win. This team knows how to win. Look, no matter what you throw at them, they know. And then it was like, okay, here comes the gauntlet. We'll really see. And it started off hot, right? You beat the Chiefs on the road. You beat the Bills, and then on the back end, the wheels fall off. Like you get smoked by the Niners, you get smoked by the Cowboys, and you drop one to Drew Lock when you have to win that football game. And they don't, because the defense is getting heat for the last drive, and they should. I mean, you can't give up 92 yards to Drew Lock, but they shouldn't have been in the position, Tyson.
Exactly.
That's the concerning thing for me. This offense is the biggest red flag for me. Like the defense is what it is, and we'll get into the defensive coordinator change and personnel more in depth in a little bit. But for me, I think they're in big trouble. This offense looks horrendous. Jalen Hurts has regressed. They only throw the ball to 3 players with reasons sometimes too, because every time they throw it to somebody else, it sucks.
Troy Aikman said that's just fine. He said he's mad at people for thinking they should get other guys involved, and that's okay for Troy to hold that opinion. But what's not okay is there's no flow. There's zero flow to this offense. Last year, if you remember, was Shane Steichen. It was we're going to run the ball to throw the ball, and we're going to pick and choose our spots very selectively. And when those aren't available, we're going to throw to the middle of the field. We're going to throw underneath, and we're going to let our playmakers make plays. And occasionally it would be a tight end screen to break up kind of the monotony of the offense if things got into a rut. This year it's poorly designed run plays, followed by a 40-yard deep shot to a double cover wide receiver, whether it's A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, and then it's a quarterback draw. Like there's no flow to this offense. It's become insanely predictable. And honestly, like Jalen Hurts has regressed for sure. Like, this feels closer to 2021. A little bit kind of seems like he's not trusting what he's seeing because he's not used to it working in this scheme. And so when guys pop open, his eyes are somewhere else because normally that's not the case. Um, the players, a lot of this needs to be laid at their feet. But we were spoiled last year with Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon because for 10 weeks this year, it was, see you, Johnny Gans. We don't need you at all. And now it's like, God damn it. I wish we had Jonathan Gannon back, which is a
Oh,
sentence
don't
we
say
never
that.
thought. I mean, let's be real.
Don't
Like,
say that.
this defense right now would be better with Jonathan Gannon under the helm. And I'm not calling him a fantastic defensive coordinator. Like, I'm saying Sean Desai sucked for the last 4 weeks before he lost his job, right? Those are facts. Matt Patricia, you can't pass any judgment on him for that game. And to be honest, they're working with spare parts compared to what the
Right.
roster was a year ago. The coordinators last year were far better, and it made everybody else look far better. The players were better too, but the gap between coaching and talent, the coaching gap is way wider.
Well, I'm just a perpetual Jonathan Gannon hater, so I can't say that. I wish he was the coordinator because I just hated his scheme and his design and just the ability to get punched in the face repeatedly in the second half and not make adjustments in the biggest game of the year. Just I can't go back. I can't get there with you, but I will say Steichen, you can see it. Obviously, I mean it's a major step back from going from Shane Steichen to Brian Johnson, and that's the biggest thing here. And I think Troy Aikman's right on a level. If you're going to be star oriented and you go, okay, we have AJ Brown, we have Devontae Smith, we have Dallas Goedert, some of the top level guys at our position in the league. Why would you not want to get them the ball? But it's the lack of creativity in getting them open because you know who else knows that they're getting the ball? The other teams, the other coordinators. And the other thing too, if Jalen Hurts is not going to throw the ball anywhere else besides those three, then we got to stop just running those routes other places. You know what I'm saying? Like we got to stop using. Just leave them in the block and do shots, do things across the middle, dump offs to Swift, things like that. Like why even have people running routes? Like it makes no sense to me if he's just not going to do it because their tight ends open, their other receivers open, and Hurts won't throw it to him. So if it's just going to be a dummy route anyway, I don't understand why that's still being used in a play call.
Then he's bailing out of the pocket like it's 2021. Like that is genuinely what it feels like right now. This is, and if that's probably closer to who Jalen Hurts is, right? Like we were rightfully very excited about his 2022 performance, and then when things started slow, it was like and then like the throw to Olamide Zaccheaus Monday Night Football in like week 3 kind of brought everybody back on board, and it's like he can do those things, and then they've been few and far between, brother. Like if it's not a situation where it's going to be we're in 3rd and 1 and there's no flag thrown on the tush push, I don't have any confidence that this offense is going to pick up a first down. And to be honest, when it's 2nd and 3 and we're running draws out of the backfield to get blown up 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage, those are real issues too. Brad, the offensive line has been much worse than I think the national media has been kind of crediting it for, because how many times do we hear this is the best offensive line of football, and then the games start. And whether that's on concepts or not, and I'm not laying a lot of that at the feet of Brian Johnson, to be honest with you. We love Jeff Stoutland. He's the best position coach in the NFL. We know all these things, highest paid, and really puts guys into position to succeed. He's also the run game coordinator. And these runs are different dramatically than they were last year. Also, like the times you're calling them suck. So I guess the main point I'm trying to say here is that there is nobody that's at fault more than the rest. I don't think you can say like just because this is one of the worst linebacking cores in the history of the NFL, that's the reason the team sucks. Everything is broken.
And so when it comes in the big trouble, before we move on to the defensive coordinator, I want to get your thoughts on that, and we can share our opinions on the change. In big trouble. So they're in the playoffs. Like they've made the playoffs.
Yeah,
they have a chance to win the division. If they win out, and the Cowboys lose a game, they're going to win the division. So you finish what? I mean, realistically, we're looking at an Eagles team here that's going to go 13-4 if they take care of business. They play the Cardinals, they play the Giants twice. They should do that. So I kind of bristle a little bit here, Tyson, when I hear the Eagles suck or the Eagles are horrible. Because in reality, 13-4, are they closer to probably a 10-7 team potentially?
You're factoring in 3 wins that they don't have.
Yes, I am, but they should. I mean, they should beat the Giants. They should beat the Cardinals. And if they don't, then we can throw everything out. I'm operating on the basis here that the Eagles, while we are upset with them that they lost to the Cowboys and the Niners. Those are two of the top teams in the NFC. We're talking about a Seahawks team who's probably going to make the playoffs. We're talking about a Giants team on the flip side who is horrendous, who got lucky with Tommy DeVito and a couple wins here. They could be legitimately sitting at 3 wins, 2 wins. We're talking about the Cardinals, who had one of the worst rosters in the NFL entering the season. So, yes, the Eagles should win those games. If they don't, then scratch the entire segment. That's all we have to do. They suck. Like, that's where we can go with this. But I think right now we're going to be looking at a 13-4 team in the playoffs, potentially winning the division, potentially with the second overall seed. And we're going to be like, okay, well, how do we feel about it now?
Well, I do wonder how many people, the doom and gloomers, and I'm guilty of it, and so are you on game days. Like, we're texting back and forth. I hate this
Oh,
team.
yeah.
This is the worst. But that's what Eagles fans do. That's not us acting out of character for Eagles fans. I wonder how much of the doom and gloom is from people holding on to over 11.5 tickets, and they're freaking out because this was free 3 weeks ago, and now it's going to get sweaty.
So let's move into this. I think there's a lot of stuff being talked about this defensive coordinator change. And of course it's comedic because everybody hates Matt Patricia and he's a punching bag. And so, oh, look at this, back on the sidelines. From what I'm gathering, from what I'm reading and what the local media and beat reporters are saying, a lot of this had to do with the lack of confidence that Sean Desai had. The players didn't believe in what was being said. The past 4 weeks didn't help. A change in somebody calling the plays, that was supposed to spark something. That was supposed to bring something. And Tyson through let's be honest, 58 minutes.
Yeah, they were awesome.
They were good. They were getting off the field. We're like, oh, okay. And then, trickle down effects started to happen. The defense looked horrible. These players, it is what it is. So the same ugly things reared its head with Matt Patricia calling the plays with Desai. So for me, when I'm looking at this, a defensive coordinator change isn't going to fix the groceries are rotten in the cupboard. Like, this is just a bad hand that anybody calling plays have been dealt with. So Desai or not, Patricia or not, they're going to have to overcome that personnel group.
Well, it's one of the worst corner groups in the NFL. I think that's more than fair to say. And I do think it's the worst linebacking group in the NFL. I mean, dude, Darius Leonard looks beyond cooked, and he's playing meaningful snaps for you after signing 2 weeks ago. Zach Cunningham wasn't on the field on Monday, so that's tougher to kind of analyze how maybe they win that game with Zach Cunningham, which isn't a sentence that you thought you would utter before the season started here. But this was Howie Roseman masterclass. Built another roster. Like, how is anybody in the league going to mess with this? And then it just kind of fell apart. Like, Hassan Reddick has 11 sacks right now. He's been really good. He hasn't been all pro. And that's like, if you are relying on somebody to have to be an all pro for this operation to work, like, that's a flawed system to run your things on. Like, Josh Sweat's been pretty good. He's not getting home at the rate that he was last year, and that's an issue. Part of that is because you almost have to play the sticks with these corners because you can't walk them down playing man. James Bradbury is one of the worst man corners in the NFL. And then when you want to play zone, are you really going to trust whoever? Are you going to trust Keely Ringo? Or are you going to trust Eli Ricks, Mekhi Garner to be in the right place? Sidney Brown certainly not to be in the right place, or not kind of over pursue some of these things. So they are working. Like, the food is rotting, as you said. The food's gone bad. But I think a lot of the disdain for this defense is because it just feels inevitable. On 3rd and 13, it's an automatic first down. Like, I don't know. Like, at a certain point, it stops being the play call. It stops being the players, and it just starts being the culture. And that's what the Philadelphia Eagles defense has kind of transformed into right now. To start the year, I don't think the defensive line lost a rep until the end of that Dolphins game. Like, from week 1 till then, they didn't lose a single snap against anybody. In the last 3 weeks, I don't know how many they've won, right? And that's partly because they've been having to play 90 snaps or 70 snaps for like, Jordan Davis is as good as advertised. If you thought that he was going to walk in here and be a 10-sack guy, you tricked yourself. That's not his fault that he's being put in this position to rush the passer. That's we thought we had the horses and we don't situation.
Yeah, to your point, Philadelphia, they're giving up the worst third down conversion percentage to opponents at 47.69% on the year. It's unacceptable. It really is. And that's what it comes down to, because Bradbury's cooked. And I see people on Twitter and they're blaming Patricia. Oh, they're in man coverage. Like, why would you put Bradbury in man coverage? Tyson, this guy is your highest paid player in the secondary right now. You at some point you have to trust these guys. You can't just sit back and do nothing. Like at some point, the players who are getting paid have to make plays.
And
And so far,
let's be
they
really
have.
clear on James Bradbury, because I think this is an important point. It wasn't they were throwing the ball to a specific wide receiver. That was Seattle saying, we're going to hunt whoever that guy's guarding. So I miss me with it was on their number one wideout. He was on every wide receiver on the field, and he got beat from rookie to all pro and every level in between.
With Ricks making mistakes, Josh Jobe making mistakes in the secondary, and then Keely Ringo in a second game really of action in the secondary, they targeted the veteran, the guy they paid $1 million to. It's more than multi-million dollars to come back for this season, and he's the liability. So that's definitely not good, and I think that's the issue here. Like it's beyond the Desai, it's beyond the Patricia deal. Like this is just back to Howie Roseman. It's the personnel, and we were excited when it came back. I was excited to have Bradbury because it looked like they struck out on C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and I forgot. And at the NFL, sometimes it takes 1 year for a corner to fall off a cliff, and that's what happened with him.
Well, that's going to be a necessary upgrade this year. But Brad, to be honest, and I know we're sitting here right now in December, so in April things might be looking a little different depending on the way the board's going to fall. This isn't a position that the Eagles had nailed. That's the concerning part. We're talking about a corner position where Keely Ringo is a guy who slid way down draft boards, and so you take him as a high upside guy. You're going to get him around his Georgia buddies and kind of see what we have there. Like Eli Ricks, you sign him. Josh Jobe, you sign him, and you can kind of run down the list. But it starts let's go all the way back to Sidney Brown, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's let's take a swing on a guy who was hurt that was going to be a top 10 pick, and it's never. At the defensive line and the offensive line, even really wide receiver the last couple of years, they've been investing heavily, and they're saying, you know what, we're just going to go get a blue chipper. Corner isn't a position that I'm okay with them jumping team to team and trying to find leftover scraps, guys that get cut right before training camp, like James Bradbury, guys that are going to get shipped out because of disagreements with the coach, like Darius Slay. And both those things worked in 2022, and the Slay thing has worked for a number of years. Eventually, Brad, it bites you in the butt because you don't have anybody waiting in the wings that you have any sort of confidence in. If you're sitting at home right now and you're upset with Sidney Brown, you're upset with Keely Ringo, you're upset with Eli Ricks, you're upset with Josh Jobe, you're upset with Mekhi Garner, that's on you. These guys aren't even really supposed to be in the Sidney Brown is an exception because he's a third-round pick. He's still the rookie. Everybody else is they're fringe guys on a 53, and they're playing meaningful snaps for a team that was supposed to walk to the number 1 seed after 11 weeks.
And I think everybody loves Howie Roseman, and he's taken some heat in Philadelphia in the past, and he kind of redeemed himself. I don't think he's above blame here. I mean, this roster
we're not allowed to blame him.
I think that's ridiculous because let's talk about what's the issues. It's linebacker. You know who doesn't invest in linebacker? The Eagles. Howie Roseman doesn't believe in it. Look across the league. You know who has really good defenses? The Niners. Oh, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw. Wow, that's something you probably want to prioritize. The Ravens. Ooh, Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen. Those are really good linebackers.
The Browns with JOK. It doesn't stop.
Browns. Just go through it. You need at least a dude at linebacker. The Bears have started to play better. Terrell Edmonds, back when he was on the Bills. Before the Bills, Matt Milano, a guy who could run around. So certain things that you gotta. I just don't understand that with him. Cornerback being one of them as well.
I think the linebacker thing is a little antiquated for Howie to not want to invest in because, it made sense when it was we're just going to turn around and hand the ball off to this guy 2 plays, and then the running back is going to pass block on 3rd down. And now when you're dealing with Christian McCaffrey's and all of the other satellite backs in the NFL, it's just Nicholas Morrow. That's your counter to this situation. It just can't happen. And it's not like Ivan Pace was an undrafted free agent. That was a guy we loved coming out of the draft. We were hoping ended up in Philadelphia. He's going to be an all-pro. You don't have to invest highly in these guys. We're not asking for a first-round linebacker. Everybody's going to be like, it's an overrated position. We're saying that there's talent to be found in rounds 4 through 7 and in the undrafted market, and they just refuse to do it. They would rather take Davion Taylor as a project because of the athletic traits than a guy that's proven he can play. to be fair. They took a guy that's proven he can play into Kobe Dean. Didn't work.
Well, and that's the other thing too. Like, there's a reason that guy at Georgia fell to third round. It's not like, ooh, Howie's just so savvy. Like, the other people had flags on him,
He's little.
So there's a reason you got to take a shot. But Tyson, I'll go back to this. We talked about Nolan Smith before. We talked about this in our pre-draft. Joey Porter Jr. The dude has proven that he can play for the Steelers. He turned in their CB1, and he's going to have rookie growing pains, but it's not more pressing or of an issue than what Nolan Smith is dealing with. That dude, there's a legit chance that guy can't play in the NFL. We know Joey Porter Jr. can at least be a cornerback in the NFL for some period of time, and that was a glaring need. But no, Howie wants to build the trenches, and it's worked so far. At some point, though, Tyson, it becomes too much, and you need to address other areas. And cornerback and linebacker clearly a place that should have been addressed this offseason weren't, and now the Eagles are paying the price for it.
And I do think like the building through the trenches thing gets like it's not overblown because it's an awesome way to build a team. It's not just a Howie Roseman thing; it's a Philadelphia Eagles thing. Like you can go back through the history of the Eagles. Like that's what Andy wanted to do. That's what Doug wanted. It didn't matter who was in the building. Brad, like we talk about this, like it's every year there's a new guy that they're throwing in there. This is Jordan Mailata hit on the 7th round pick. Fantastic selection, one of the best in Howie's entire tenure. And then Landon Dickerson kind of falls to you because he's got the ACL injuries coming out, but he was drafted to be Jason Kelsey's replacement, who's been your starter for 13 years or whatever. And then you got Lane Johnson, who's been starting forever. And then you've had a turnstile at right guard since Brandon Brooks goes away. Like when we talk about building through the trenches, for some reason it's glossed over the Andre Dillards of the world, right? Where we're going to invest a first round pick in this guy, and we're not going to have to worry about it, and they miss. And so it's really hard to get excited about like the prospects of improving this thing quickly through the draft. Knowing that, I think we're all very, very excited about Jalen Carter, and we're all excited about Jordan Davis, and like those guys and Devontae Smith. Those guys have been really good first round picks. They were also as close to can't miss as you can get. We're talking about a Heisman winner, Jalen Carter, the best defensive player in college football, and then Jordan Davis. Like if that guy got off a random bus in the middle of whatever city, you would say that's a football player right there.
So I want to move into this, Tyson. I want to get your thoughts. I want to talk about any offensive changes because Nick Sirianni came out today and said, "Don't blame Brian Johnson, blame me. I'm responsible for this as much as anybody." And let's be honest here. Sirianni was an offensive guy with Frank Reich in Indianapolis. He came over to Philadelphia. He was calling the plays before turning it over to Steichen. That's really when things started taking off. I don't know how much he's involved with these game plans. I don't know if he's still doing it. I don't know if this is all Brian Johnson. I don't know if he was still doing it with Steichen and Steichen just called the plays. We don't know. Like there's really been not a lot of info that came out, especially when Steichen left. My concern here is this. Sirianni still has his hands on the play calling. On the offensive design. It's his design, and Johnson's calling the plays. That would be the worst case scenario for me. The best case scenario that you can look to a change is no, it's Brian Johnson who's designing everything. This is his game plan, and he's the one calling the plays as well. Because that's an easy fix. You can just go get another guy. You can give it to somebody else and have them call the plays or have them start designing things. If this is a head coaching deal, I think we got major concerns that we may have to talk about.
Yeah, I think it's probably closer to the former there with this being, hey BJ, you can call the plays, but I'm building the schemes and we're going to be working together throughout the week. And like on the offensive side of the ball for the coaching thing, it's an everybody issue. And Brian Johnson's play calls have been as close to 32nd in the league as you can possibly get. I don't watch everybody as intently as I watch the Eagles, so potentially the Saints are calling dumber plays than Philadelphia, but it just feels like every time there's a critical moment in the game, you can set your watch that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to run a play that doesn't work on second down, whether that's a wide receiver screen with Quez Watkins and Devontae Smith blocking, followed by a quarterback draw, or if it's going to be a 35-yard deep shot on immediate pressure, right? Like this is the line. Whatever's going on with the checks has been really bad the last 3 weeks because guys are just kind of doing whatever they want as far as like coming up the A gap or pressure from the outside, and then Jalen's bailing. So it's hard to just say these play calls are the reason, but they're certainly part of it. Like on Monday night against Seattle, must have moment in the game. AJ Brown runs a comeback route 15 yards down the field on the right side. But in the meantime, Kenneth Gainwell floods the same area of the field with the defender and prevents Jalen from being able to throw the ball where it needs to go to be caught. That's coaching. And those are the things that, you kind of want to push back a little bit when it comes to like Jalen Hurts stinks now. It's like, where do you want him to put the ball? Because if he throws it where he's supposed to, it's a pick six.
Yeah, I think the overall criticism that Jalen Hurts is a bad quarterback, like I'm seeing online, it's ridiculous. And of course, you can't take too much uh, credence in what people are saying online because like this guy sucks. He's never was good. They had to build a stacked roster around him for him to even be good. I'm like, are we not familiar with history of football? I mean, look at Joe Montana. Look at that roster. Like Jerry Rice, the running backs. Go through it. Brady had a good offense of around them. How about Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers? I mean, Brett Favre had good guys to throw to. Marino, like just go through it. Yeah, good offenses have good players. Kurt Warner, I mean, my God. So yeah, Jalen Hurts, he's the benefit of having good players around him. Sorry, that's called being a good organization, So I don't think that's fair. But what I'm concerned with, Tyson, I was thinking about this. If this is what he's gonna be the rest of his career, where he's leading the league in turnovers. I'm not a big all interceptions are bad guy, that. But the fumbles are a major concern. That's what I despise the most of a quarterback, especially. You can't fumble the football. If he's going to be towards the top, I think this is an anomaly in terms of what the turnovers are this season, but towards the top of the league, is hamstrung by poor play designs and poor play calling with how much money he's getting paid. That is a bad sign for the Eagles' future.
Right, you don't want to be a 9, or I guess now that it's 17 games, like 10-7 is the same in my brain as 9-8 was. So we'll go with 10, even though 10 wins sounds fantastic. But you don't want to be a 10-win football team with the fifth highest paid quarterback in the NFL. That's not the goal. Sneaking into these wild cards and hoping to get hot at the right time and beat a bunch of guys on the road. The other side of that is, and we don't have any evidence that this is true, but he really, truly, to me, doesn't look right. Like whether it was the knee thing from early in the season. I mean, we're talking about a game where apparently, it was a pretty nasty flu that he was going through. So those are real concerns. But all year long, he just has looked a step slow and maybe a little bit unsure. And I think that's the biggest difference because the timing is off. And it goes back to what I was saying about the flow of the offense. Last year, it kind of felt like what Dak Prescott is doing right now in Dallas, where who was it? Chris Collinsworth was saying that Dak figured out the key to football because he hit his last step on his drop and let the ball rip. That's how every offense in the NFL that operates at a high level should be run. That is what is missing from Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts will get to the end of his drop, and the routes aren't halfway done developing. He's too greedy to take the 3 yards to at a certain point in time was Grant Calcaterra or Jack Stoll, so you can't yell at your quarterback for not throwing to those guys over letting one rip to AJ Brown. But when it is Devontae Smith streaking wide open over the middle of the field, or it is Dallas Goedert sitting there as you're checked out and you're still unsure of whether to let it rip, it's a genuine question between is that like who Jalen Hurts is, or is this like he is not trusting the coaching and like in film study, he's not even sure what he's going to see.
I think we're not going to know that until something changes here, and Sirianni's not going to do it in season. And the surprising thing to me, Tyson, is like as the bad as the defense has been, because it's been bad. I was surprised that was the change because I think anybody who's watched the personnel is just not good enough. Like I was shocked that out of all the things that were changed, it was Sean Desai instead of Brian Johnson. I think from the jump, people are like, I don't know about this Brian Johnson guy. Like there's something that stinks in that kitchen, and now it looks like we're going to get him for the entire year.
They're not going to let go of Jalen Hurts' godfather in the middle of the season. Like they're just not going to do it. Whether they should have even hired that guy is a completely separate discussion. The answer to that is no. But like the relationship part, all we hear from Sirianni's relationship, social intelligence, all of this stuff. Jalen Hurts is already clearly struggling with confidence. Whether that is a Brian Johnson issue or not, I don't think Jalen would ever tell us. But I think it was a move to try to motivate the entire team because you're hamstrung the same way you were with Prez Taylor right, with Carson Wentz. When you get in the quarterback's buddy, the same way the Bills were with Ken Dorsey, you bring in the guy Josh Allen wanted, things go bad, and it took way too long to get him out of the building. Press Taylor still has jobs, and then like he just follows Doug Peterson around wherever he goes, and he gets a job. Like these are like the relationship aspect is a huge thing in the NFL, and it's fun to make fun of these retreads in the league. But there's a reason guys stick around for so long. He attached himself at the hip to the hottest young star in the league.
Yeah, Press Taylor calling the plays for the Jags, and the offense has fallen off a cliff. I wonder why.
Weird.
So Tyson, we got to move into this. What's next here for the Eagles, right? So it's been a bad stretch. They just came out of their gauntlet, like the Seahawks. Like this was still included in the gauntlet of the schedule, right? Because they had to go Niners and Dallas and to Seattle. They never win there, and oh man, they look like they're going to be good. So the gauntlet's done. They're on the other side. They got their ass kicked in the latter part of it. It started off great and they got smoked. They got exposed. Now everybody's calling them frauds. I think in terms of a Super Bowl contender, you can say that. Like they do not look like one.
Right.
Are they still a good football team? Are they a good NFL football team? I think so. I don't think they're up to the expectation that we placed on them early. But what do you think is next for this team when they get into the playoffs?
I still, and this opinion could change very, very rapidly, but I still think the Philadelphia Eagles have better players than just about everybody in the league. I still believe in Nick Sirianni to figure this thing out, and maybe that's foolish of me at this point, but first Eagles coach in history to make the playoffs 3 straight years. Like his winning percentage is crazy, and the coordinators being the coordinators, that's going to be an issue all year long. But I know for sure, and I said it yesterday on our NFL preview, the whole league. It's going to be really hard to kind of navigate between what fans feel and what other teams feel. Because to me, that sure looked like Pete Carroll was really excited about beating a good football team. Well, everybody else in the country was, these guys suck. And so say what you want, and we're texting back and forth. We're calling them frauds. We're getting after them and all that good stuff. Nobody is going to want to see if Dallas walks away with the 2 seed. They don't want to see Philly in the first round, or whoever it is. Tampa Bay certainly doesn't want to see the Eagles. Doom and gloom all you want. This team is in the playoffs, and it's going to be. It's just, what are you doing complaining about a team with 10? Like, this is where the Eagles were probably supposed to be at the beginning of the year, right? Like 10 wins through this point would have been like, okay, that's not a regression from that Super Bowl team a year ago. It's just the way the losses have happened and kind of the rapid succession of those losses with the 3 in a row that have tainted this team.
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing, right? They've gotten smoked, and that leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and especially for a team that we thought coming in was going to contend for a Super Bowl. And when you get smoked like that, especially against your rival in the Cowboys and the Niners, who, kind of a new rival because they were talking all that nonsense, that makes you salty, especially as a fan, right? And we all know how Philly gets. Like there's nobody more fickle than Philly. Like they love you one second, they hate you the other. And I bet you, here's the thing. What's next for the Eagles? They're going to win these 3 games. They're going to dominate the Giants because they always do. These are going to be 3 get-right spots. I'm not saying people are going to be bought back in. I think people are still going to be hesitant, but they're going to host a playoff game. I think they're going to win the division because I think the Cowboys are going to get ran all over by the Dolphins. They're going to host a playoff game. Somebody's going to have to go into Philadelphia, and we know how that normally goes in the playoffs. And that's the reality, right? Like that's the situation. Now, can they win 3 games in a row? I don't know. So that's the concerning thing. But I think their ceiling is winning a game in the postseason. I think their ceiling is still going to the NFC Championship game.
Floor is winning a game in the postseason.
Yeah, floor. I'm sorry. Thank you.
But I mean, that's not that far-fetched. It just feels weird to say, basically, after how we felt over the last couple of weeks, dude. If this offense comes out and puts 35 or 40 on whether it's New York or Arizona, it's going to start feeling a little bit. You're going to feel better, and like we talked about, not buying back into this team as Super Bowl contenders, just based on what we've seen. Brad, I think a lot of people are if they come out and put 40 on these guys. But alternatively, if they look like shit again, then who cares? Then they already, like, it looks like they quit. And so if they continue to look bad, then we were right, and we get to stomp on our favorite team and be happy about how bad they are. Who wants that? Like, that's the part of Eagles fandom that I don't quite get. I'm going to talk shit, but I want them to win the game.
Oh yeah, it's just it's the Negadelphians out there, man. Like they want to call in the local radio. They want to call in and complain. That's
WIP.
just wait till the Sixers inevitably get eliminated to do that. Like that's what's going to happen. Like I'll be there with you because that's what goes on in Philadelphia. But Tyson, let's move into this. Any closing thoughts that you have? Like we kind of get it here, but I want you to get if there's anything you want to get off your chest, anything you want to say before we close out here on Philthy.
I don't think DeAndre Swift's going to be on the team next year. I think Britton Covey is the MVP of the last 4 weeks of the Eagles, which I just had to say because it's awesome. Yeah, I mean, there's massive holes in this roster that I didn't think existed.
Same. I did not expect this many glaring weaknesses to be shining here. I thought the secondary was going to be better. I thought the young players were actually going to be pieces. I didn't think they're going to have to step up and play. That's a different story here. The linebacking core. Oh my goodness, what a disaster this has proven to be. So Tyson, I'll say this. I mean, we're still going to be rooting for the Eagles, obviously, but draft season. I mean, I've never been more like plugged in the past 3 years than what the Eagles are going to be doing this draft season. That's for sure.
And those episodes will be coming to you sometime soon.
Absolutely. So that's going to do it for us on Philthy here. Go check out our other episodes on our ISWIS platform. I Said What I Said podcast. We gave a full breakdown on everything going on around the league. Again, this is Philthy, a Philadelphia Eagles centered and focused podcast. We'll be back talking some more birds. I don't know if we're going to get too excited after they stomp the Giants. At least that's my prediction. But we'll be back soon. Maybe preview some playoff stuff or if something else goes bad. So until then, guys, peace.